This is an article that came out in Men Post, dated November 13th, 2017, and I will leave the link to this article in the description box. Add to the list of people hit by the opioid plague in Minnesota, medical examiners. Last year, opioid drugs were responsible for nearly 2,100 non-fatal overdose treated in Minnesota hospitals and claimed 395 lives, according to the Minnesota Department of Health, which experts take as a sign of a growing problem fueled by prescription painkillers, heroin, and an ever-expanding list of powerful synthetic drugs. When we hear about the strain caused by a mounting death toll, the narrative is often focused on the human tragedy, a descent into dependence on the highly addictive drugs, lives destroyed or lost, often at a young age, and grieving families. We don't hear as often about the strain the increase in overdose deaths can place on people whose job it is to investigate the circumstances of them, those who work in medical examiner offices. In October, the New York Times told the story of the New Hampshire State Medical Examiner's Office, which risked losing its accreditation because of heavy workloads resulting in large part from an increase in opioid deaths. It's almost as if the Vigoths are at the gates and the gates are starting to crumble. Dr. Thomas Andrew, the retired chief medical examiner, told the Times, "I'm not an alarmist by nature, but this is not overhyped. It has completely overwhelmed us." Okay, more work. Though Minnesota hasn't been hit by opioid deaths to the same degree as places like New Hampshire, Baltimore, Ohio, and West Virginia, there has been an increase in opioid-related caseload here, as Dr. Andrew Baker, the chief medical examiner of Hennepin County, we're definitely feeling it here. It hasn't been as bad as other places, but it certainly puts a strain on our staff and our budget because our case numbers are up, Baker said. When he met with Men Post in October, he had just returned from a conference. All we chief medical examiners can talk about is the opioid plague and how it's just crushing what was already a huge workforce issue, he said. Under Minnesota law, state law, all sudden or unexpected deaths and all deaths that may be due to entirely or in part to any factor other than natural disease processes are required to be reported to medical examiners to serve most counties in Minnesota or coroners who tend to serve smaller counties. Drug overdoses fall into this category. The medical standard requires medical examiners to perform a full autopsy, which entails removing and dissecting organs and photographing the inside and outside of the body. In overdose cases, a process that can take an hour or two. In straightforward cases, or a day in more complicated ones, plus comprehensive toxicology testing. In jurisdictions served by Hennepin County Medical Examiner, Hennepin, Dakota, and Scott counties, the number of overdose due in whole or part to opioids have increased from 43 a decade ago to 175 last year. The number of heroin overdoses went from 0 to 82, and the number of overdose overall rose from 106 to 248. If those overdoses were all autopsied by Baker's office, that would add the equivalent of about 2.7 additional full autopsies each week overall, 2006 levels. So what, I was reading a different article, and it's saying that many medical examiner offices are already over the limit of what they're allowed to autopsy per year. And many of them, it's a lot of medical examiners' offices that are at risk of losing their accreditation because of all of the drug deaths. So they're going to either have to change how the accreditation is done, or, it's going to be a lot of medical examiner offices in violation because of the high number of drug deaths that are going on in the country. So I tell you what, it's a job I would never want to do. I would never want to do this job and touch those drug addicts all day long. No. But that's the vast majority of deaths that are going on in the country now. And, just like the video I showed you on the documentary that was done on MSNBC, it said the vast majority of white people in this country know someone, directly or indirectly, that have died from drug overdose. That's how many have died. Personally, I believe they are undercounting the number because they're embarrassed by this shit. And there's no way of controlling it. You can't control millions of people that are abusing drugs. It's impossible. I will leave the link to this article in the description box, but please tell me what you think, ladies and gentlemen. Please leave your comment and subscribe. And if you can, please go right ahead and click on the notification bell. That way you don't miss any of my uploaded videos. Peace, family.